Hi, this is Ben Quiggle with another edition of WCM's Outdoor Hospitality Update. I'm editor of Woodall's Campground Magazine, and of course, my co-host Mike Gast, writer for RVTravel.com and former vice president of communications at Campgrounds of America. And we're just glad to be back for another week. The weather's finally broke here in Michigan where I live, and it finally feels like maybe summer's going to be here to stay. It's supposed to get to like 85 tomorrow. So I'm pretty excited because I hate cold weather. So, but Mike doesn't have to worry about that. He's in Hawaii.
It snowed on the volcano last week, so
I know.
There you go.
Our guest is Scott Bahr, president of Cairn Consulting Group or Cairn?
Cairn.
Okay, Consulting Group, and that's in Maine. And what's the weather like in Maine, Scott?
It's actually really nice here today. We're about 65 degrees, sunny. We're done with the snow here too. So now we're getting ready for bug season.
Every time I say I'm done with the snow, some old guy will come up to me and be like, "Well, one year we got snow in July or something crazy." So they're always anticipating more snow. So we haven't gotten snow in July in a while, but I guess it can happen.
So Scott, we're going to talk to you today about the all of your research, I guess, but focusing in on that recently released North American Camping Report from KOA. And I think the first year on the report was 2015. I think we did the research in 2014, at the end of 2014 for that. And so it's been going on for quite a while, and it's got a nice track record. And full disclosure, I was the editor on the first 5 or 6 of those reports and had been out of the last couple, but it seemed like it's still going strong. And it was one of the first comprehensive scientific studies that the industry actually had access to. And KOA was nice enough to share the findings with anybody that wanted to take a look at them, I think, which gave it a lot of footing. It certainly isn't the only game in town anymore, but maybe you could walk us through some of those top line key findings that you had this year, Scott.
Yeah. For us, this year each year we try to freshen it up a little bit. We try to add some new content, try to keep things relevant for everyone while also tracking information throughout the years that's relevant too. I think for this year, some of the findings, one is just looking, the obvious bubble of 2020, 2021 of campers. It's real obvious. Some of the graphics in the report are very striking when you look at it graphically. It's pretty amazing, really, to see that.
Yeah.
It's just because we were plugging along at a fairly we the new campers each year were fairly consistent. It was increasing, but it was fairly consistent. Then the last 2 years, that influx. I think for me, this year, one of the things we wanted to look at a little bit too is where did camping sit in the context of leisure travel? Because one of the reasons that camping has seen this growth, and the reason it was steady before, is that we always were able to pick up that group of people that had curiosity, younger people who were entering into adulthood and their careers and their families. So we're always picking those folks up as new campers, new camping households. But what happened the last 2 years because of COVID is that leisure traveler who didn't have as many options decided to dip their toes in the water of camping. Because camping offered a safer option for many. It offered the opportunity for them to travel when they couldn't take the types of trips they would normally take. And so that resulted in a flood of new campers, new RVers, campgrounds being full. And we measured that in context of leisure travel and saw that, camping accounted for like 40% of the trips among, a random set of residents. So it was really striking, how much it accounted for there. I believe that a lot of those leisure travelers, some will go back to their normal habits, but we had them. And I think we'll still keep a part of them. But for me, that was, that's really what's been striking in terms of looking at the results. And obviously the RV part. But we've seen a real increase in ownership. In the past, we had a decent proportion of RVers, people who RV'd as their primary way of camping, but they didn't own it. They would borrow them, they'd rent them, but they didn't really, they were not the owners. But we've seen that ownership rate in the last 2 years increase a lot. And so, to me, those are some of the things. Bringing in those new people, a much more diverse group of campers the last couple of years. It was trending that way anyway. We were already seeing that happen. A lot of the groups out there have been doing some good work and bringing, some of the more diverse groups of people into camping. I think that's been great. We've been tracking that for a while. I think what will be interesting looking forward in terms of looking at these results too, and one of the things we did is I'm, as a researcher, sometimes I tell people this all the time. We look at things as the glass is half empty. It's by our nature to be a little bit more critical of things.
Yeah.
And in the past, I would say things like, "Well, we should look at this. We should look at this." And this year we did. We looked at the idea of attrition a little bit, and there's a whole section in there on, but we did in a balanced way. Like, what's more likely to keep people into camping, but what are some of these risk factors? And we're seeing some of these groups who came in droves that I call them at risk. I'm not saying that all of a sudden the drain's going to open and people are going to start leaving camping. What I'm saying is they're not as attached to camping as what the typical camper.
Scott, don't you see that on both sides? Don't you have the newbies that come in that aren't going to stick? It's not the experience that they expected to get. And they've also got the folks that I talk to a lot on rvtravel.com that have been doing this for 20 or 30 years and just don't like where it's going and are giving it up. So don't you expect a little bit of a bleed on both ends?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I think we will. And depending on how the industry responds to the overcrowding, and all the newbies out there, the how people are they're just everywhere, and sometimes the behavior's not so great. If you talk to campground owners and managers, which I do quite a bit, they'll spend all day telling you horror stories, and other campers will tell you those horror stories too. So yes, it's true. Part of me feels like that group of people is going to find a way, though. The experienced people, they'll find places to camp. They're going to, one of the things we've been tracking is the boondocking. Things like boondocking, overlanding, dispersed camping. These things are really growing up. If you talk to people who manage the public lands, the BLM folks, they'll tell you their own horror stories about that too. But people are looking for alternatives. I feel like they still want to get out there and do things. I feel like they still want to be a part of what's going on. Yeah. But there is a group that is somewhat at risk. And one of the things that came out of this research that I've attached to is there's a push and a pull and everything. People can be pulled in or they can be pushed in. In this case, many people were pushed into camping because they couldn't do anything else. So they saw RVing as a way to do it. They could work remotely. Their kids could school remotely. They didn't start for the reasons that we like to see, which is love of the outdoors, being outdoors, participating in outdoor recreation and such. That's the group that we have to kind of keep going and give them the opportunity to experience the outdoors a little bit more.
I guess, when I read the report talking about the attrition aspect, their camper retention section, when I read the part, about the new campers in 21, an estimated 1/4 are likely to or at risk of not camping in this year. I guess I thought that was kind of high. What's your initial thought on that? I mean, is that just normal, or is that something that should be concerning? I mean, those are brand new campers, and obviously, like what you mentioned, some of them may have never done it before and they tried it and they don't like it, and we were never going to get those campers anyways, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's they are at risk. It isn't normal. It's higher than what we've seen in the past, and their experiences just weren't. I mean, if someone is as an adult hasn't really camped yet, and they go out and camp and it's not really a lot of fun, they're going to find something else to do. One interesting tidbit that sneaks in there is the Gen Z group,
Yeah.
that youngest group, which is one of the big at-risk groups. One of the things that they disliked most about camping was the people they camped with.
Yeah.
And they were a group much more like the camp either with their peer group or their parents.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which ones there are causing the friction, but I mean, it was pretty pronounced. It was really interesting to see that they didn't get into the aesthetics of camping, the campfire and stuff, and they had friction within their group. I found that really fascinating. So I think it's a group in transition.
When we've got what was the number? 90 some million camping households that at least identify as campers, 93.8 million active camping households, even though if they may not have camped last year. When you've got that many families that are out there camping, and now you got that younger generation coming up, it's almost like we get to count them twice, because it's not so much that they're new to camping; it could be a continuation of the lifestyle that they were brought up with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's they're going to be interesting to track. I feel like someone else asked me this question, and I feel like they'll come back. It's truly I mean, they're in this transitional phase. They're just starting careers, families, building their households. Once they get those things established, and hopefully they're able to soon, I believe they'll come back.
Do you, so part of this though too, I guess in my mind, is maybe these are people who would try camping again, but they're not going to do it every year. Maybe they tried it last year because there really wasn't anything else to do, and this year they've decided maybe they're going to go do something else, but they'll come back. Do you guys track that, like, as far as
we do ask people about who go away and come back? Yes. Yeah, we're in our monthly camping survey that we do.
Yeah.
We're actually tracking, we're actively tracking the groups that started in 2020 and 2021 to see what they're actually doing. And not to give away too much too soon, but it looks like that group, we might be seeing some upward movement. The first few months we tracked that group, it wasn't nearly as optimistic. But I think as camping season is starting now, that in doing this type of research, one of the things I always try to tell people is that people tend, especially when you talk about travel, hospitality, they're very optimistic. They have really big plans. If everybody, and we're all that way too. It's like, how much you gonna go camping this year? Well, I'm gonna go like every other weekend, and then reality hits and you don't. You end up going, you still may go quite a bit, but you enter the camping season or the vacation season with these ideas, and they don't always transpire. I believe that group, one of the reasons that they weren't as positive earlier is that they were thinking of doing some of the leisure travel that they were used to. And now that camping season's coming along, gas prices are up. The economy's not doing so great. Camping is a very affordable option. You can find camping, most places within 50 miles of people's homes. That's it's very accessible. So I believe that those factors are also contributing to that.
So we've also got a new segment. I think it's something I don't remember us tracking before, under this name at least, is the urban camper. And I know that probably feeds into that at-risk group, because again, these people are, however you define urban, and I'm sure you'll tell us, but they're obviously new. They're coming out of an urban setting where traffic, where congestion, where crowds, where storage of the RV is a factor. Is this something new? Obviously, that I think your stats said that nearly twice as likely to be urban-based campers. So obviously, this is a doubling group of people that you're watching here. Is this something that's going to stick? Are these people truly at the tip of the spear of the at-risk group?
I don't think that the urban group is necessarily the bulk of the at-risk group. I do believe they're part of it because they're a group that came out during COVID because they're escaping the cities. They wanted to get out. Many of them, they probably just need to get out away from people in general, but they escaped the cities, and they I will keep a decent percentage of those people, I believe. I think they seemed to be a pretty avid group. They seemed to like it. They camped a little bit more than some of the other folks. They spent more money doing it, which they seem to like. The crowding at campgrounds doesn't bother them as much. So they're yeah, I actually I think it's a very attractive group of people to continue there. I mean, from a business point of view, I mean, if you can look at it from two perspectives, but from a business point of view, they're also higher income, so that they're going to spend more, and so on. And
one thing we got to point out, Scott, I guess, is the demographics of the report. A lot of people assume since KOA is backing this that they're all KOA campers that you're studying, and that's not the case.
No, it is not. In fact, I recently had to correct someone who told someone else that it was all KOA campers or all campground campers, and it is not. This is one of the things from the very start, and I'm sure you recall this, Mike. We defined camping for the camper. We cast a very wide net. We include everyone that falls within that definition. Like I said, in fact, I said this to someone recently too. We did research on how we should do the research. To define it. That was, I know for example, if you just ask people how they define camping, they're going to give you a definition. The first year we did this in New York, the person who moderated the session, he was just like, he goes, okay, camping to me is just a tent on the ground. This other stuff isn't camping. I talked to a group of RVers, and they're like, well, RVing is different than camping. So that's why we defined it for people. And so if you put out there, if you just ask people in a questionnaire, do you camp? Do you go camping? You're not going to get the same group of people that we do, because we include many more. We include everybody. And because then we decide from there, we can filter people out and put them in different buckets, based on how they camp. But camping fits within that very large umbrella.
I don't know if Ben saw this on Woodall's, but I know on RV Travel, when we talked about the report and some of the research that's going on, and we bring up ethnicity, some of the established RVers kind of get anxious about that, or they don't like the fact that we bring ethnicity into the research, because they just want it all to be the same. And why do we have to talk about whether a camper is African American or whether they're Hispanic? Why can't we just all camp? Do you ever get any pushback on that, Scott?
I have. In most of the people that the campers that we do talk to in our research are almost all willing to, like, we offer people, like, they don't have to answer the question if they don't want to. But we have like 1% of the people don't choose not to answer. So it's like there's no pushback there. I think people in general, I mean, to be honest with you, most people want to be counted. I mean, I go out there, I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of from every background possible. I've heard the same thing you're talking about too. People don't really want to talk about it, but I think we should, if we're going to continue to, be accepting of this. One of the things that we have seen in some of our other work is the higher the percentage of people from different ethnicities, the less likely you are to have incidents of people like feeling uncomfortable. Yeah. So again, the more diverse the group of campers, the less likely you are to have people who don't feel that don't feel comfortable in those situations.
And
I
the
think,
minority campers that you're looking at too also are a much larger percentage of the new camper base, right?
yes, much. It's
Yeah.
that peer group, that younger peer group, millennials and Gen Z. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have the same experience on Woodall's. Like Jeff Kreider just wrote some stories for us on diversity, and we have the same experience. People kind of ask us why we bother with that, but I mean, from a business perspective, those numbers are growing. So camp park owners want to know, how do I attract and make them feel more comfortable and do the things that they want to see at a campground. So, it makes sense.
Yeah, certainly America isn't as homogenized as a lot of folks would like it to think it is, and
Yeah.
those cultural differences do come in to play,
Yeah.
especially on a new experience like camping, when whatever a generalization of a culture would bring into that experience.
Yeah.
It really I think it bodes well for the industry that they're making inroads like this, but it's going to take a while before everybody camper's a camper is a camper is a camper.
Yeah. Yep. I thought one of the neat parts of the study, we talked about, we always talk about Wi-Fi and how important it is, but I think you noted in the study that the importance of that, the impact of it has doubled. And then I noticed that you also had the section on there about how many additional days they spend camping, which is, I think it's 6 days. With those who said it was the greatest impact, it's 8.6 days. So, I mean, when I talk to park owners, they talk about the midweek still. But I mean, if you have that great Wi-Fi and more people are going to work, like the urban campers, they're looking to work when they're camping. I mean, that's going to fill kind of that midweek gap, especially if you're getting 8.6 days on average from a camper, I guess.
What I found really interesting in those results too, one of the things that I dove into a little bit more in the results was kind of identifying that person who always works when
Yeah.
they camp. The person who says, whenever I go camping, I always work. It's like, is this person going to be, like a real outlier in some of their ways? Or they going to enjoy things less? It was just the opposite. They're a group that they get camping is much more likely to relax them. They much more likely to see it as escapism, even though they're working there. And I believe that this is the person who's probably like, some of those type A's that they're always working anyway, who in the past didn't take camping vacations because they couldn't pull themselves away. Now they can take time out, and maybe they just check their emails in the morning, and it just makes them feel better. It's like, there's no emergencies, or whatever. Or maybe they take an hour out of their day, do some work, and then go fishing or something. It's been really interesting. I know a lot of people don't, say people shouldn't have, Wi-Fi on their phones and everything. But what we're seeing is that it's helping people. It really is. It's helping them relax and get out.
Yeah, definitely. It is. So I think Earl Hunter, founder of
Earl.
founder of Black Folks Camp 2, he just the reason folks ask why you include race into the mix is because those folks don't know why underrepresented folks have not camped. If current campers, RVers knew the reasons why many Black folks didn't camp as much as others, they won't have an issue with the way data is collected. So, I mean, I guess there's some truth to that too. I mean, I know when I've interviewed Earl in the past, he's mentioned some of the reasons why Black people in particular don't camp as much, and some of the barriers he's trying to break down. And I think the report kind of dives into that to some degree.
And we're doing some work with Earl too, and to dive into some of this content a little bit further. So stay tuned for that in the coming weeks. Earl, if you're listening, we're working on it right now. So
yeah. So I guess you also noted in the KOA report, and I don't know if it was a completely new section, but the economic factors and the costs. And you mentioned earlier how it's still very affordable, way to camp. And you mentioned the greatest barrier to camping would be the affordability. Do you see gas prices and inflation and stuff impacting camping moving into the summer? I mean, the gas prices just jumped, I guess. So
Yeah. We are seeing that. We've been tracking that in our monthly survey as
yeah.
well. And it's changing people's behavior. Staying closer to home,
Yeah.
taking fewer trips but staying longer. There's some cancellations going on, though I think over time we might see fewer of the cancellations as people adjust. I mean, I guess we'll see how much more it jumps, but people are adjusting their behavior to the economy right now. And one of the things that I think is we need to pay attention to too is that for some people they'll spend less on their camping trips when they go. They're going to spend less in the local communities and stuff like that. So they're going to cut back, probably bring more of their own food with them, not go out as often.
I did a story this last weekend on rvtravel.com about cancellations and wait lists at campgrounds, and I think a wait list used to be a common thing on the campgrounds because they would have maybe 10 or 12, 20 people on it. Well, then it grew into the hundreds and then the thousands of people even on a wait list for popular weekends. And campgrounds, it looks like they're moving away from wait lists because they don't need them anymore. And they're very labor intensive. A lot of them said by the time they got around to calling people off of a wait list, they'd already found someplace else to stay. People put themselves on 5 or 6 wait lists, and just kind of gums up the system. So people have been, campground owners looks like they're really falling back to relying on the reservation systems and just putting available cancellations back up and having no trouble at all rebooking the sites because there's just so many people out there looking.
Yeah, I'm and I think I can't find it right now, but in the report, didn't it mention that the younger campers are willing to spend a little bit more? I guess they had more savings or whatever, or did I read that somewhere else?
Yeah, the younger campers, again, I think for a lot of the younger campers, they're less experienced. The older campers, spend less because they know what to bring, they know what to do, they know how to budget for camping. I mean, a lot of times people will go out and they'll just need to buy a bunch of stuff. I mean, KOA is a great example. They have the campground stores that are very well stocked and they do very well, and that's because a lot of people don't come prepared for everything that they need.
Yeah, well, Billy McNamara, which I know, Scott, you work with her. Waitlist can be helpful, but those points are true. People book other places if you don't have what they need. Knowing your camper and what type of sites you need helps with that. So, very true.
Scott, you also talked a little bit about how many campers you expect to come this year. How much of that's going to grow again. And we were just under 10 million, which was a little less than the year before, but not a lot. And now you're projecting that we're going to get a total of 61.3 million projected camping households, which is about 4.5 million more than we found this year as far as the newbies go. Still on a growth curve, starting to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. That's taking into account that potential attrition. I'm pretty conservative. It's interesting that this is the first year that a projection is made in the report, but I always do them, but we rarely put them in. I'm always kind of gun shy, but I can tell you, if you go through last year's monthly camping reports and look at the monthly report for May of 2021, I did a projection of what I thought the number of campers would be for this year, and I believe I predicted 57 million, and it was 56. So it actually works. It's amazing when the research actually works, isn't it? It's those things we love to see. It's like, oh wow, that's great.
You need to start doing political research. Those guys can't figure out how to make their stuff work. So.
No. This is where I'm staying.
So I guess you also work with RVIA on some stuff,
Mhm.
correct?
Yes, I do.
And I guess what have you been working on the RV side of things? I guess what's your role with RVIA and in the type of research you help them with?
We we do the new RVer research. We've done a couple iterations of that.
Hmm.
I believe they did some releases on those results that kind of profiling the new RVer, the people who purchased RVs in 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
Um, we've also been doing some travel polls, prior to the different seasons. In fact, we're doing one right now
Okay.
that we're compiling the results on, as we speak. It's looking at summer travel. That's with RVIA, Go RVing, and
Hmm.
we've done that a couple times. We did it last summer as well. We did it this past fall and the holiday season as well. So we've done I've done work with them in the aftermarket parts, service
Okay.
and quality as well. So yeah, I do a decent amount of work with RVIA and that group. We do the member survey as well. So if you're an RVIA member, that's us. We do that.
So there's a lot of research out there, Scott, and
Yeah.
considering that we were kind of the first ones out of the box with that North American Camping Report back in 2014, 2015. And now it seems like every month somebody else is coming up with a new report within the industry. How does the industry, as a campground owner, how do you wade through that to decide what's legitimate and what's not? Are there a few tips for that? And then on the other side, how is a experienced camper supposed to know what to believe and what not to believe?
One of the things that I would advise people to do is when you look at it, when you look at the results of any of the research, just do it through a critical eye. Do that with ours as well. In fact, I think I wrote a blog on this recently. It's like your work should be able to stand up to scrutiny. Um, we're not going to sit here and take, shots at anyone else and how they're doing. But I think also everybody's work should be able to stand up. As a consumer of research, look at how they do it. How are they picking the people who are involved in it?
Mhm.
I've seen this in other industries, and I'll step away from camping just because, again, I'm not going to critique anyone's work, other than someone outside the industry. I have no problem with that. No, but no, is that they did a survey of people like in their Facebook group only,
Yeah.
and then put it out as like this represents a group, of people in this industry. And it's kind of like, what you got was a snapshot of some folks who are engaged with you on your Facebook page, but they're not representative of everybody else. If the research doesn't go outside those boundaries and they don't say that our results are based on these folks only and not everybody, so don't assume that it applies to everybody. That's really important. I think it's just important to keep that in mind. Um, you don't necessarily have to look at the number of people who answer the survey unless it gets really small. If it's a couple hundred people, then you should. There's a lot of margin of error there. But you get 1,200 plus. Your margin. Most political polls, by the way, are 1,200, 1,500 people because you have a margin of error 2-3%. So again, as long as they do a good job of selecting the people who are involved, that's great. I would also invite people to look at question wording. How are the questions asked? That's important. That's an important part of it. How do they
Yeah.
screen? Stuff like there's a few of those things. It's hard for the consumer. I agree, Mike. I wish I had a really good answer for your question. I think it's just be a good consumer of the stuff. Be critical, but and reach out. I invite people all the time to reach out to me. It's like, if you have a question, please reach out. I'm willing. If I can't answer a question, then I probably should go back to bartending because it's I need to be able to do that. I need to be able to answer questions. And so I would invite people, if you see an organization puts out work, call them, call someone, talk to the research person, most of these people will talk to you and just ask them some questions. And it'll be amazing what you'll learn too doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is so much data, and I think definitely the KOA reports kind of spurred that along because, I mean, in 2015, when you guys came out with the report, there was just nothing really available like it. So, and we've had so many new entrants to the market that it's just been amazing. All the data that's been coming out now. So,
And Scott, you also include Glampers into this report.
Yes, they
And
make it
that's
in. They make it in because of our definition of camping. So, yep.
And that's definitely still it's yet to be determined, I guess, whether that's a gateway drug to RVing, but it seems like a real different audience.
We'll see how this plays out. Mike, that's a really good topic, but it's something we're going to track because right now those people who glamped last year are expressing a lot of interest in trying some other experiences. We're seeing a big interest in them wanting things like RVing, overlanding. Overlanding, I think, seems to be growing a lot.
Why don't you define that better for us? Because I know that term came up as a question on when they saw overlanding. What is overlanding?
Overlanding is essentially off-road camping.
Yeah.
For lack of a better way of putting it, going kind of off-road on dirt roads into the some of these backcountry areas and being self-sustaining. There are some suppliers out there I think are doing a great job of offering the gear for these adventures. I'm kind of a little bit of a camping gear person, and I see this stuff and it's like, oh my God, I got to do it. But
so what makes overlanding different than boondocking?
Typically it's the type of vehicle. They're many cases they're taking a Jeep, Land Rover, an off-road type of vehicle to get in places that you can't access with an RV or even a typical SUV or crossover. It's really kind of going to some of those areas, and in many cases staying in camping areas that aren't established either, where there's typically no site there. There's you're going cross country.
There's a lot of like new smaller RV companies that have really started making some overlanding vehicles and those kind of rugged vehicles that can make it through some of that terrain.
Sure, yeah, you can go buy one with it, and honestly, some of them aren't that costly either.
No.
And they'll put the off-road package on for you. It's pretty. It's a growing industry. I really I haven't done really an overlanding trip, but it's on my list of things.
And I think that's kind of why like van life has been taking off too, because these people are taking their vans into those areas that maybe a larger RV can't get into, and that's what they're using the vans for. And I think that's some of the reason why it's kind of spurring that lifestyle as well.
So we've got a lot of new money coming into the camping business. We've got a lot of investors that are looking to either buy existing campgrounds or build ones in specific locations. Has that put a new interest or a strain on researchers like you that have the data that some of these investors are starving for?
Yeah, I get a lot of calls. I don't. I always tell people the camping report is out there if they want it.
Yeah.
Or if they want something really specific, I always tell them they can budget for it. And then they usually go away. But it's something that we've seen, a lot of the last couple of years. I typically don't, because of my relationship with KOA. I don't consult with people who are developing campgrounds just because of the conflict of interest. So, but the camping report's available. It's been noticeable, the volume of people asking about that wanting very specific information for site selection, looking at capital investment and so on.
So yeah, with the influx of urban campers, do you see new interest in camping facilities closer to those major urban centers?
That's something we haven't really tracked yet, but I'm going to take note of that, and it's include it in our monthly camping report, because I want to look into it now. No, I think it's great. One of the things we can actually look at, though, now that I think about it, is distance traveled. But I think that would be a great question to answer, to see what that desire is. Do they want closer access to the urban areas, or do they want to still go out? Do the people from New York still want to drive up to where I live and hang out? That's what they're doing now.
Yeah, on our end, I mean, it seems like there's more developments near urban centers, but it's also it's difficult for the developers the closer they get to urban centers, because obviously the population gets a little bit denser,
Mm-hmm.
and the communities, they have to deal with a lot more people. Not saying that building it out in the middle of nowhere is easy either, but but on the permitting side, sometimes when you have less people to deal with, it's a blessing. So, but especially along like the East Coast, that's a permitting nightmare. I don't know how Maine is, but I know like New Hampshire, Connecticut, Massachusetts. I mean, those developers definitely have a huge task to get stuff permitted, and it's not just large projects, it's even like your 10 site glamping project. I mean, they really will put those people through the ringer sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Are the days of seat of the pants campground ownership or management, are they over now? We've got so much data out there. It seems like it would be kind of foolish just to decide that you're going to expand your park by 2 or 3 times, or you're going to put in more certain types of sites without really understanding your market. Is there a need for specific location research before these big moves are made?
I think there probably is, depending on the scale, but it's kind of looking at what are the demand centers in a certain area. That the tools that the person has now are so much better at their fingertips. There's so much more information. But yeah, I think you're going to see that. You're going to see I think competition's going to heat up in an industry where it wasn't. The people are going to compete for certain types of campers. That higher value camper,
mhm.
dollar value camper. Especially as costs impact everything, and we're just kind of seeing where everything's going. So I think that's what you're going to see. I wrote something recently that we did not include in the report, but we may revisit it sometime. And I call it the comfort camper. And campers are kind of split right now. You see, especially that leisure traveler who came over to camping. Is they're either a current comfort camper, which includes a lot of RVers, or they're a comfort seeker. That's what they aspire to. But then you have another group of people who they just want to go out and they want to get way away, and it's a very different profile of person. But that the bulk of the people right now that are coming into camping want that comfort, and they want those amenities and services much closer to a resort style experience. So that, I think, is where you're going to see the competition, and that's where things are really going to heat up.
I getting ready to wrap up here, but I think when I talk to RVers, or when I read stuff about RVing, and maybe Mike sees this on rvtravel.com too, but we see a lot of comments about the costs going up for a site, the new developments coming in, charging quite a bit more, I guess, than what they're used to. Do you see, like, are RVers right to be concerned about like the cheapness of the vacation going away eventually, or do you think there will always be some sort of affordability to camping, I guess?
I think people will pay as long as the service and amenities are there. They'll pay for service, especially. The kind of the more the RVer who's just staying for one night kind of experience, that person is the one that'll be the most affected by it. But the person who stays for several days, a week, 2 weeks, whatever, They want service and amenities. They wanted that kind of experience. And as long as you're delivering on that, the price sensitivity is still, you still have a decent amount of room to play in there. Your prices can increase a decent amount as long as people have a good experience and that you're delivering on it. So anyway, that's a long way of saying I don't see it happening in the near term. There are some price increases going on. We've seen that. We'll see what that level of tolerance is. I believe that you're going to have this scale, because I think there's going to be a lot more RV parks that are going to come out that are going to be really high end. They're going to have a lot of services, and they're going to be really expensive. There's going to be more of those. So people, when they're out shopping, now the RV site that's $125 a night doesn't seem quite as much as because there's another one down the road for $250. So
yeah. Well, I think that's about everything, Scott. I think we drilled you enough. So, but it's always great having you on the show. You're a wealth of information, and I look forward to seeing you in person here in the next two days from now at the RV Power Breakfast here in Elkhart.
Excellent.
Which I'm hoping they turn to an RV Power Lunch soon, so I don't have to wake up at 6 a.m.
And after attending the first several of those breakfasts, I really am going to miss the eggs and bacon at 6:30 in the morning. That's always such a treat.
The coffee's pretty good. It's not horrible coffee, so that's good for me. I'm just not a morning person. So, but it was great talking with you, Scott. It was great seeing you again, Mike. And thanks everyone for watching. And we'll be back next week, Tuesday at 3 p.m. So
excellent. It was great being on. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
Thank you, Scott.
Bye.